What does that mean, Gowan? Where does that word come from, the Gowanus?
I understand it. It is an Indian tribal name.
I may not have my facts right, but I think
Indians.
it's the name of a
tribe
that lived there or relocated
the
there.
Settlers here.
Because Native Americans were building the steel structures for high-rises, not being afraid of heights.
It was built and named after Chief Gowanus.
Somehow I think it's an Indian name.
And apparently for a long time, the Lenape people and the Dutch lived quite well together.
This canal is named after that Indian tribe.
It turned out that it was the legend of Chief Gowanus.
I know there's some projects called the Gowanus.
There used to be Gowanus Creek, and it said that, unless I'm mistaken, George Washington crossed it.
The first export out of this canal
The #1 export of the Gowanus Canal, which was oysters.
was the Gowanus oysters.
A Dutchman
Diamond Jim Brady in Chicago
started digging through the creek
used to send from his oysters here.
to make it easier to bring supplies to his back door rather than round and round and round.
George Washington's army was on this canal. They escaped through this canal.
What I fear most about the change that's looming over the Gowanus Canal is that we forget what it was.
This was the site of the First War of the United States.
We forget the stories that are there to be heard. We tend to avoid these kinds of places.
They told us it smelled really bad.
Some people do.
It was polluted. You could tell by just the look of it.
Because they wake up certain emotions, certain feelings.
Typhoid, hepatitis A, B, C, cholera.
They crawl into you in a way
Well, people have died within 20 minutes because
that is frightening.
the toxins and so forth and diseases that are in the water go right into the lungs.
I think that once one confronts that and gets over it, you have access to a whole other way of thinking, a whole other way of working.
If you fell in, you would die.
Well, it's a little dangerous, guys, because we don't know what's down there. So you go ahead and rowboat or canoe, but if you fall, either you're going to light up or be very sick to your stomach.
But remembering what it smelled like, and some people have actually seen that bloody thing on fire.
Years ago, mothers used to bring their children down to the canal to inhale all this tar for asthma.
You know, when I first came over here, it was strange. It was in the wintertime and at low tide. The smell on this bridge was like really crazy.
If you could imagine New York City as a house, and it has a front door, which is the Statue of Liberty, then it must also have a back door, and the Gowanus Canal is the back door. It's has another kind of traffic altogether, and is perhaps a more revealing door to the house. If you're a detective on a stakeout and you want to know what's going on in a house, you better be watching the back door as well. It's so easy for things to just slip by, for places to stash things away, places where secrets are kept.
Who knows what they're going to find at the bottom of this canal, how many things are down in the bottom of this thing.
The divers go down, you know, they have the deep sea diving gear. They go down and they hook it.
Who knows what you might find, cars, bodies, everything. Every once in a while you get a body floats up to the top every once in a while in here. Who knows what you're going to find.
Sway with me. Other dancers may be on the floor. Only you have the magic that can be when we sway with ease. When we dance, you have.
thing has been going through the miracle, because there's nothing else to call it, which is the transformation that resulted from the opening of the flushing tunnel. And, you know, prior to that, there was a little bit of life. There were some, what they call killifish, like living in the top 3 inches of the water. And that was the only place where there was enough oxygen. And the rest was like this thick, green, antifreeze kind of soup. And there was basically nothing in there. And, you know, on the hot days, it would begin to smell. And then one day, this tunnel opened up, and with it came like tremendous amount of life. Within a few weeks, there were horseshoe crabs, there were shrimps, there was snapper bluefish, there were baby stripers, there were all kinds of things. Things started growing on the boat, you know, and that had never happened before. And then you could see into the water and look down and see things on the bottom. And so then it became a venue for life, as opposed to something that was almost forbidding, that was like part of death and decay and ruin. But the transformation was almost like within, I remember it took like 3, 4, 5 days, and all the life started coming into it.
I think what worked for me was the idea of hope. You know, I lived here for about 7 years. Like everybody else, there was preconceived notion that the canal is this toxic bathtub. That was also part of my reality.
You got crabs here, and they got fish in there. Yeah. Oh, you know.
I've noticed a lot more fish and a lot more cormorants and herons who fish. And they'll often fish alongside the boat as we're rowing.
Minnows are very common here.
They said they used to be sharks in here.
They were tiny little fish, and I looked at them and they were swimming, and then I went like this, and then they swam away.
Crabs mating on the Gowanus Canal.
Years ago, a crab couldn't live in there. It was so thick and murky, like it was too dirty.
Horseshoe crabs coming in to mate in the spring.
We documented about 18 horseshoe crabs mating here.
A number of different fish and fowl.
People are fishing in the canal. They're pulling up striped bass.
Large 3-footer striped basses feasting on some of the minnows of the Gowanus.
I see a couple of crabs, little tiny fish.
We have a couple different type birds around here now. I think one of them is an egress, if I'm saying it right.
And I see some ducks in the evening. Yeah. Who brought the ducks? They come on their own.
Is this wide enough for a whale?
You see people fishing. One day, the guy caught a fish this big. I don't know if it was healthy to eat it, but he took this and they were so happy. And there's people fishing all the time. I hope the restaurants that we go to on Smith Street are not buying this fish. You know what I mean?
I think it's because of the fact that we're city kids. We're not really exposed to like the ocean or anything that's naturally available to us. And by going to the Gowanus, we find that in the city there could be many aspects of nature that people might not notice or people might not realize that are there.